Alrighty, guys. So let's continue with the construction of the exploded diagram right here that we were just talking about, and we had our little introduction on the previous video, right? So the first thing that we need to do, right, and let me so you're gonna see I was playing with the, as you can see, I was playing with the colors of Rhino. So maybe here I can show you guys real quick that you can actually play with that and change that. Just be careful, right? I'm talking about particularly, you're gonna see that your screen is gonna look different than mine. Let me go ahead and change that so that I don't want to throw anyone off. But just know that you can actually create your own different theme, I guess. That's very simple, right? Just go to options, enter appearance, colors. The colors that I was messing with and playing, this general area right here, and you see all of the dark tones. I was kind of like trying to get a dark theme, just so that it doesn't strain my eyes that much. But you see that there's still kind of like certain areas that is not kind of working. So for the meantime, I'm just gonna hit restore defaults and hit OK. And that way I don't throw anyone else off. And I guess everything worked except for my command line, because I think that's somewhere else. I think that's over here. And let's go restore defaults. Okay, there we go. Now we're back. So the first thing that we need to do, guys, is generate a new file. And I mean that we want to have different files for the rendering, have different files for the exploded accent and so forth. All right, so let's do that. And it's very simple. We do a file, save as, class, and let's see, rendering. So this would be exploded. Call this rec, because I'm recording, right? So exploded, you can call it, something like exploded diagram right here, and we do a save. That way we can actually clean the file a little bit, should we need to, right? Should we need to clean this up a little bit. So we have our new file. So this is what I'm talking about in regards to clean it up a little bit. Hide this over here. Okay, I just want to make sure I am recording, because you know me, sometimes it doesn't go as smooth as possible. So let's get rid of anything that we don't need here. And here, and let me just make sure that this is the clean drawing. I was cleaning the drawing a little bit. There was something off with the floor plates. Just wanted to make sure this was the right file. So again, clean this up a little bit, get rid of things that we don't need. There's this command in Rhino called Purge. If you know AutoCAD, you might be familiar with it, right? And it helps us get rid of items that we don't need anymore. So if you type Purge, enter, right? So you get unused information to purge, right? So layers that you're not using. So you might have created a layer and not use it, or when we make 2D, it creates layers for each of those lines. And I delete that work already, so it should get rid of some of these layers over here. So the purge commands get rid of block definitions or annotation, groups, hatch, layers, line types, and materials that are not used on the file, hence making the file smaller and not as heavy, right? You might have been trying a bunch of materials and you didn't use all of them. or you maybe create your own materials, and the software, you know, can clean that. So make sure that all of this is set to yes for right now. Yes, 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 right here. I go ahead and click enter, and if I press function 2, it tells me right here what it did, right? So it purged one unused annotation style, it purged empty groups, unusual hatch pattern, 10 empty layers. So it did get rid of some stuff for this file, right? So I can close this right here. So F2 function 2, right, brings the command history. And again, this is a script of everything that I've done in the file since opening. Yes. So, okay, so we get rid of some of that right there, some of the purge. Now let's start creating the, let's start off by setting up a view. It may not be the ultimate view, but it will be a starting point, right? So again, kind of preparing again to have these layers projected. So, you know, to have kind of like these layers in space over here, right? So, you know, it depends how many layers you foresee having, right? But, you know, I can more or less, you know, create the view, and then I can change it, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and save that view over here, right? So let's go ahead and save it. Let's call this Exploded 1. Okay, and that way, you know, anytime that we rotate, we can come back to that view right here. And from there, we need to start moving our layers. This is where, again, grouping tremendously helps, right? So hopefully you've been making use of groups. If not, perhaps that's something that you might want to do before starting this, but, you know, go ahead and see what we're doing, see my workflow, and then you can strategize backwards, right? I mean, okay, knowing what we're after, you can then prep your file to get there. So we start moving things around, and this is where, again, I start moving things. I move things in a particular axis with a particular increment. What does that mean? I'm going to use the green axis from the gumball. I'm going to start moving actually this direction at specific increments, right? So at that distance, and then I'm going to move more objects this distance, right, etc., etc. So let me do that. So let's start off by moving that one right there. Let's say 30 feet. Okay, great, except that we wanted to move the other way, right? I mean, we wanted to go to the front, not to the back, right? So undo, right? Move this again, minus 30 feet. So there it is, our first layer, right? Let's say now what happens if I select this layer over here, right? And I move it, you know, let's say if I move it 30 feet, it's gonna be the same space right there. But you see how hard it is to actually see the layers. You know, we can actually see from our case study right here that there's a good amount of space between layers, right? I mean, both from the origin and between the layers themselves. So that we see the entire layer, or as much as we can of that entire layer, right? They're not overlapping, like this layer is not on top of this other layer right here. So let's keep that in mind. Let's go back to our drawing, right? And so that didn't really quite work, but I'm gonna move this maybe, so let me undo, right? Maybe rather than doing the 30 feet, I move it 15 feet, which is half of what we moved the other one. You see that now we have a different distancing between them. So, you know, so from there, right, I'm gonna move, you know, this one over here. But again, if I move it 15 feet, right, it's going to be the same distance as within the space. So what if I actually select that, select this by holding shift, I'm selecting all of them, and I move everything 15 feet, right? Whoops. 15 feet, right? You see how collectively they have moved now, right here, right? So I'm gonna keep doing this, right? I'm gonna do this maybe another 15 feet, right? And maybe go back to my view right here and like, nah, it's not really doing it, right? But let's not forget about the circulation, right? Because the circulation should be with this layer right here, right? So before I do that though, I'm gonna group it, right? So that I have a easier time moving stuff around. So I'm gonna actually first group these together, since they're one single staircase, and then I'm gonna group this ones together again, and then, wait a second, and then I group them together again. Now, so how would I get the circulation to be in line with its layer? Well, I have to move it again, but how much? Well, it seems that it was one increment of 15 and another increment of 15. Let's try that, right? So move that 15. Nope. Let's try this again. 15. Wait a second. It seems like it wasn't. So it was 3 increments, right? It was 3 increments, and that's why I not only use the gumball and move them like this, just kind of eyeing them. I move them with specific increments so that if I need to tweak stuff or reorganize things, I have a reference, right? Which my reference is that right now is I'm using increments of 15, right? So, you know, and you can see that from the side view right here, which is the right? These are the different layers right here, and the origin, which is 0, let's call it. So this has been plus 15 feet, right? Plus 15 feet plus 15 feet. Okay, that would be, whoops, this distance. Let's go back. So, okay, right, let's go back to our view. Okay, now you'll see from the prep file that I used for the class, you'll see that even though, so these 3 objects right here make up one layer, but I went ahead and divide them, right, and separate them. We can see if we take a look at the file, the file that was produced, we'll see that, you know, and let me zoom in there so you guys can see this better, right? So these 3 layers are part of one layer, which is layer 1, except that you see this is the structure. This is a type of glass, and this is the other type of glass. This is a tinted glass, and this is a clear glass. Even though they're technically all merged into what will be labeled, or you know, what we're calling a single layer, I'm still extruding them to be their own layer for this exploded diagram, just so that we can see the complexity of that one particular layer. And I'm doing the annotation, right? I mean, these are all layer 1. This is layer 2 with the vertical circulation, and these 2 are layer 3. And I'll get into that once I am annotating this. So we go back to our prep file right here. So what does that mean? Well, it means that actually I need to keep pushing stuff away, right? I mean, so that I get a clearer view of that, and you see more or less how that's going, right? So I'm gonna move, let's say everything, all of these 3 layers, maybe another increment of 15, so that I can then ungroup this layer right here that I have grouped together. I can select the orange only, right? And I can do this a long way, which is just selecting that group right there, hold shift, select the other group, and you know, kind of like do this. Or since I have been diligent about using my layers, I can just go into the layer name, which is structure right here, which is the orange. I can right click on it and select, or click on select objects. You see that if I do that, it's going to select all the objects that are within this layer right here. So it's a very helpful tool. So they're selected, so I can move them, right? 15 feet. Now I want them to go towards the back, so I think I can get rid of the negative. So I can type 15. So there you have it, right? And then, not forget, let's group them. Let's group them so we don't have to do this work again. There it is, right? So that's the other layer right here. Let's do the same for this one right here. This one's made out of 3, right? If I take a look at my prep file, right? I have the structure, glass 1 and glass 2 projecting out of that. So here we go. Let's ungroup it. Beautiful. And then from there, right, we can select different components. Now, I need to remember which layers are which layers, right? So that one right there is the frame, if I'm not mistaken. Remove it. That's correct. That would be subclass structure layer. So that would be subclass, I think it's this one right here, subclass curves. That's not the right one. I think it's this one, subclass structure, right? So select objects. I can group them first. And actually, how much do I move those? Actually, those move 0, right? Because actually I'm trying to move this layer and this layer from this one over here. So actually that one stays in place. The next layer to move is the glass one, both glass ones. And then lastly, I just move this glass layer just 1 increment, right? So let's take a look at that, right? So the next are these green panels right here. So that's subclass. So I come to my subclass layer. I think it's this one right here. Yes. Select objects, group, and then I can move this. Now this is negative or positive. Let's see. Boom. There you go. So there it is, 15. Okay. Lastly would be the glass layer, which is this layer right here. So let's go ahead and select that right there. So again, glass, I come right here to the glass layer, right click, select objects, group, enter. This is also why it's important that we had cleaned up the file, because if you had some other glass material out here, it might move with it, right? I mean, since I'm using this kind of command right here, that's what's important, to have a clean file, right? So there we go. Now, how much should I move that glass layer, right? So that it's not here, but it's actually somewhere over here, right? Well, that would be, so if I move it, right? If I do 15, another 15, right? That's going to be right there. So I'd actually need to move it another 15 so that it's its own layer over here. Okay, and we have that right there, and that gives us pretty much our different layers, if I'm not mistaken, right? So that gives us different movements. Now we have done the explosion. Now let's take another look into our view, and if this is gonna work, right? Because part of what we've seen and learned from this view right here is that, again, we're able to see each of the layers fully without blocking adjacent layers, and that's not really happening over here, right? With our drawing so far, you see how rather than, you know, seeing the entire layer as, you know, our case study, you know, I see this first layer entirely, but this layer is blocking the rest of the layer behind. So I'm only able to see, I am only able to see this much over here from the layer on the rear, right on the back. So I'm basically missing some information from this layer right here, which would be this right here, this portion, right? The blue portion, you know, it's where they're kind of overlapping, right? So let's see how maybe we can address that. okay? And ultimately, if we think about it, what will we have to do, guys? How can we solve this? Right? We just have to adjust our increments. So I'm gonna leave that one right there, the orange on the back, and I'm just gonna move all of the other ones. But wait a second, what happened? This is not grouped. And you see why important it is that it's grouped? I don't wanna have to select each of these pieces individually. I just wanna click one place and select everything. No worries, I can still do that. Very carefully, I make sure that I select everything on that layer right there. Or even better, what can we do, right? You guys are right, I don't know, I'm not thinking. We can go into its layer, all right, which is this one right here. Right click, select objects, group. Whoops, not delete, group. All right, let's go back to our view. So we're gonna leave orange in place. We're just gonna keep pushing each layer, you know, more increments. All right, so let's see. So I select that. I'm going to select, holding shift, I'm going to select all of them, right? Because I don't want them to overlap. All right, so I go back to this view, and that I'm just gonna eye it right now. So how much would I need to push it? Right? I mean, wow, that's a lot. If you look at the bottom of the screen, right, you'll see. Let me highlight it. There's this number that you're gonna see right now where it says feet right there. Keep an eye on that place right there on the screen, so that when I move right here on the gumball, you see the increment, right? So let me undo, because I'm gonna use that as a reference, right? So I need to, in order for it to clear, I need to move it about, of course, my mark is not letting me see. All right. So I need to move it about 36 feet. Now also that has to do with the view, right? So if I tweak my view a little bit, you know, that could maybe be addressed differently. So let me undo it. Let's move it. Let's start something small with 15 feet, right? So I move those, deselect that layer right there, 15, deselect the previous layer, move another 15, deselect the last one, move 15, and deselect that last one and move just that one 15 feet. Okay, now we're giving ourselves more space right here. Okay, let's see, how does this look? So now we need to readjust our view. Let's make sure that we're on a perspective view, right? So set view perspective, right? So you have sort of that right there. Is it me, or it looks like the orange is? Let me check something, guys. So if I move this 15 feet, it should overlap with that one, but it's not. No, wait, 30 feet, right? Oops, 30 feet the other way. Okay, so we're good. We're good. See, that's why I like to keep everything with increments, so that if I need to troubleshoot something, I know what I've done, right? So I guess I'm seeing, guys, I guess what well, maybe it could be something like that. Like that's working. It's just that it really distorts the project. You see how we're not able to see that layer right there? And ultimately, guys, what I think we're learning from this is that perhaps this is not the right view to use. So I'm gonna save this just as a reference. So I'm gonna go over here, save as, exploded 2. Save that. Alright. Maybe we can keep playing with it. Let's start seeing now how maybe the isometric view looks, right? So we go to set view, isometric, southeast. Right, we have that. Notice how everything became a little bit clearer. By the way, I'm gonna turn this thing off, which is the street, because we're not gonna need that. Right? I actually turned it off just to keep the drawing, you know, not as messy. So street, I think is this one. Yeah, so I'm just gonna turn that off right there. I'm also gonna turn off my grid, right? So that, you know, it doesn't get in the way. And I'm seeing that there's something weird with this model right here, there, that I noticed that it carried through over here, and I was like, wait a second, what's that? That's not right. So let me go ahead and fix that real quick. So this guy, I'm just gonna scale it 1D. So from there to there, it's equal to that. And I think just for fun, I'm going to scale this guy rather from there to there, and maybe that depth right there. Hopefully that doesn't make anything look weird. There we go. And then lastly, I think there's also something, I don't know, there might be, nope, I think this one's fine. Alright guys, let's go back to our view. Set view isometric southeast. We have that. I'm using control right click so that I adjust the view right here. I'm going to save this as exploded 3. Why? So that we can, you know, judge them, right? So that's exploded 1, that's exploded 2, and this is exploded 3. So we need more guys. I mean, I like that one. I like that one as well. I think this one's perspective one. Let's look at our reference, right? Because I think, I'm not sure this is an isometric, a true isometric. This line looks, it doesn't look straight. So it might be an isometric, but it has maybe a rotation. So maybe something like that, but again, side view, isometric, southeast. Let's erase this. Well, the one that I used for over here, it's not an isometric, it's a perspective. I really like the look of it, right? I mean, it makes it more dynamic. So let's go with that. Let's go with that, guys. I have that view, this view right here, this angle. See, but it's so much harder to get all of the pieces individually, huh? Yeah, I don't think this is gonna work. Alright, so we'll have to go with maybe this one or this one. Maybe that one. Well, let's see what happens if I select all of these ones right here, because these ones are fine. It's just that maybe I like to see a little more of the building right here. So what if I move everything 15 feet? Kind of like that. I can do this. I'm gonna update this view right here. Save. Exploded 2. Yes. Exploded 3. Exploded 3 also looks very clean. I think that's what I like about this. Alright, let's keep going. We can actually, you know, we're not exporting anything yet, so we can always come back. Because I do want to add something that, you know, we can start adding right now, which are our projection lines. these pink lines that you see right here. And most of the layers, at least in this project that I'm using as a reference, already define the frame of the layer, right? So I'm talking about the orange layer right here already has this boundary right there, which is the box. This one too. This one doesn't, right? So I'm creating this, here maybe I'll use a different color. I'm creating this yellow outline that you see right there. I'm creating that. And then what am I going to do with that? Just like our case study, which was this one over here, right? This one over here. I'm going to dash it just so that it implies that that's the layer itself. So you can see that over here, right? So that would be this kind of frame that you see right here, right? So let's draw those in, and let's also draw in our projection lines. Okay, so let me go back over here. Right, let's get those going right. All right. So what we want to do is create. I'm going to create 2 new layers. I'm going to project. Call the first one project lines. Again, I do like to use something, you know, that stands out a lot, right? In order for me to see that, so I'm gonna use that pink right there, and then we use a new layer. I'll call this layer frame, and we'll give that something again very bright, and let's make that active. Let's do the projections first, right? So, you know, that's something as simple as we start with the line. You know, we come right here to the origin. Now again, this might not be perfect, so let's see how this works, right? And even better, I'm just gonna not finish the line right there. I'm gonna select it. I'm gonna select its endpoint. And I'm gonna move it with the gumball and see how it's working. You know, in this case, we don't. You'll see that on the end result, you know, it's really hard to actually, you know, see what's going on there really. So we don't need to be as, you know, as perfect. You wanna call it that way, right? But you know, so there it is. So we go back to our view, so you guys can start seeing how this looks. Exploded 3, right? So we have our first line, and then from there we can copy it. So I'm gonna copy, right? This one from there to there, and then these two, right? From there to there. And before we do anything else, guys, let's make sure that we do a file save. A very critical habit, guys, just saving your work. So we have those right there. What happens if I now select them and I group them, and then if I press Alt, the Alt key, click and drag on the gumball, you see that plus sign that is on my cursor? I made a copy of that, right? So I'm gonna make a copy there. Right, we have that right there. And then I can maybe switch this up a little bit, maybe make them smaller. Right, with the gumball. Right, and then from there I can maybe, probably this is easier on this right view, right? I can move this there, and I can use a scale on the one direction, very important, from there to there to there. You see it's not 100% on it, but I think we can get away with that, right? go back to our view, right? I think so. And I wouldn't do just a single line right from there to there to there. Again, I just like to keep control of everything, right? I mean, and just you know, I've learned that later on can just cause problems if I don't, you know, I'm meticulous like that. Next, you'll see that so this layer ensembles with this one, which then those two ensemble on the inside of the building. Now, this line right here doesn't move. Well, I mean it does, right? But it doesn't connect with this one physically, right? So the next lines that I'm gonna have are these ones over here, right? So let's do that, right? I think that's how I have it right here. So I can copy this again and maybe do it from the right view right here. And just be careful not to snap onto something, right? And maybe even the spacing should not work because they're the same distance apart. It's just the positioning looks a little off, but I guess not. You know, I'm gonna. This one you can see it more, so I am gonna change this one right here. So I'm gonna ungroup it. Alright. And I'm going to select that one, zoom selected. I am gonna fix this one. I am gonna move it to the corner. Since this is the closest to the viewer one, I am gonna fix that one right there. I'm gonna select this point right here. I'm gonna extend it probably around there. Then I'm gonna delete this one over here. I'm gonna copy this one from that corner to this corner. I select these two, copy from that corner to this corner right there. And we have that right there. Now you'll see that the last or the first layer, it's a little bit different, right? Let's take a look at what I've done on the prep file. Now for this one, you see that I actually projected lines from the different vertices of the irregular polygon. It's not a square in this case, they're not squares. So that's what I've done. So I draw a line from there, right, to there. And I can use copy, so that I can copy it, you know, there and there. I can rotate there and there. And then I can select that line there and copy it from there to there to there. And then what can we do so that we don't have to redo that work on this side anymore? That's right. I can select them all. I can type mirror. I can use this axis right here, hold shift, and mirror them like that. Go back to our view, and it's coming along. It's coming along right there. Next, let's do the frames right here. These frames right there. For the layer, I think we called it layer frame, so that's it's an easy one. Let's get into that layer. I'm going to draw a rectangle. I'm going to use the vertical tool. So I draw a vertical rectangle from there to there to there. I select it, and since I'm using increments, bam, there it is. And I can maybe do this, right? So 30, 30, 30. So let's see copy this rectangle, this axis, whoops, copy this rectangle on this axis 90 feet. And okay, so it worked, but it kind of worked, right? So it actually aligned to this face right here, which is, that makes sense. That's where the origin of that layer, right? I mean, is the front part component of it. That's okay. I can either move it with a certain distance, or I can just eye it right here. In this case, I'm just gonna eye it, and it's about 4 feet and 5 inches. We'll do that. Let me clear this right here. Go back to our view, and there we have it. All right. So I think that's it, guys. The last part is gonna be this view thing. You know, I mean, I think I'm not a big fan of this boxy look. I like this view a little bit more, to be honest with you, and maybe even kind of like that. So I'm gonna save this view right here. Yes, yes. And I'm thinking that maybe just for clarity, guys, well, these guys should be grouped. And are these grouped? They're not grouped. So let's select them right here, group them. Alright, so we do that. I think we can actually make this a little bit more easy to understand, or clearer, to say that these guys, even though they're not moving the full 30 feet back, they're actually moving half of that. So I'm going to scale this by 0.5, and I'm going to move right this over here, and I'm going to leave it there, right? Because this layer technically moves and stops right there, right? So it would technically be right there, and this one should also move, but just there. So I'm going to copy this. So again, I select that, hold Alt, click and drag, release my mouse, release my keystrokes. But wait a second, probably I should do this one over here, because this one's gonna fit. So select it, hold Alt, click and drag, make a copy, select that, scale it by 0.5, we do that, and we reposition it as such. Bam. Right there. Or should this be more like that? Right, that this layer overlaps with this one, these two overlap with this one doesn't overlap, but it stays there, right? Now all of the systems move there, right? So it starts from there to there, right? And then everything moves there and then there. So I think we're gonna do that, guys. I think, and again, you know what I mean, each project, each graphic, it requires its own logic, right? So we'll do that, right? So I think we're good. The only one that I'm not very convinced with is this one, and only because I wonder if we actually make a copy of this guy right here. something that represents that better. All right. Click this up just a little bit. All right. I think we're done with the Rhino part, right? So go to File, Save. Well, actually, we just need the last part, right? Which is the the line work, right? I mean, which is I'm going to turn off the image here, which is all of this that we're exporting and getting out of Rhino. So once we set our view, right? So I went ahead and leave it on a perspective. You know, I rotate it. So again, it's going to vary, right? Your project, you know, I mean, just again, what we learned is that, you know, just make sure that the layers are legible, right? All of them individually, they're not overlapping, and they have a consistent gap in between them, right? Relative to their place in their original position. So I think this does it, right? So I saved the view. Now what we need to do is generate, right, the line work. So we're going to use the same command, make to D, right? So whoops, let's make sure that I go to the right view, which is this one. Select all of the objects right here and enter. On this dialog box, really the only thing that we need is group object, the view, right? We want to project the view, and the layer from the input objects. So we hit OK. It's processing, it's computing. Now the first thing, right, as soon as this is done, we're gonna see the work displayed on the ground, which will be a top view. Is going to be on the individual lines, right? So the first thing that we want to do is group it and then move it. And the object, as it's generated, is placed on the origin, which is the 0, 0, 0, right? So we need to group it, displace it, and export it, right? So you see the line is it's growing, right? I mean, 95% done. So again, it's creating a 2D drawing out of a 3D model, which is I love this command, right? I mean, I really do. So you know, almost there, 99%. Done. I don't want to touch anything on the computer, anything on the screen, because sometimes it can be a heavy command for the computer to operate. And I don't want it to crash. Alright guys, so success, right? So take a look at what there's in my screen right there. So what was the first thing that we're going to do is again, I'm going to zoom out. You see that it's yellow right there, right? Those yellow mark are my screen, so let me clear those out. But here in the software, the first thing that I'm going to do, right, is group it. Group, enter, move it out of the way. And you can see, we can appreciate the beauty of this command, right? 2D drawing out of a 3D object. Neat, huh? Love it. Love it, guys. So, and you can see it right here better from the top view. Right, that's our drawing, guys. That's what Rhino generated for us, and what we're going to use to create our graphic. Now, actually, there's one more thing that we need. Whoops. From Rhino, if we go to our Illustrator file, which again, the two main things that you're going to need for this graphic, this drawing, is lines and an image file. Right? So you see right here, this is it's not a render or a render, it's a render display mode. You know, we don't have time for a render, so let's do that. So let's go back to Rhino. So we can generate the render we're going to use as a graphic. And again, that image is important because it's what allows us to see. So if I turn it off, the lines are beautiful and you know it's somewhat legible, right? But not fully. Now, if we bring in the image, we slide it on the background, right? We see way more, right? I mean, we see materials, we see colors, we see shadows, right? Which are so important. And it gives us that depth, right? I mean, even the glass, check this out, right? I mean, it gives it some little slight color right there, and even some translucency. Nombre, guys. Neat. No image, image, no image, image. Clear my screen. Let's go back to Rhino. So let's go to this render display mode. Now, as you see from the example right here, since I don't have a lot, you know, we don't have time to edit the heck out of this image, I needed for it already to come with a white background and the least amount of noise, if you will, from the image itself, right? So let's do some modifications to our display mode right here so that we can get rid of these blue tones, this shadow, and maybe be able to see this glass better. Okay, so that's why again it was important for us to create a new file because we're gonna mess with the rendering and display modes for this. So we can start off with the background. So if we do a right click on the render tool right there, it's gonna take us to the render settings. So render, right click. So I want to have a solid white background. So I whoops, I keep forgetting I can't do that. I want to get rid of the gradient. So I'll do a solid color. That should be what color? White. Click OK. And there we go. Now you see that we have lost the glass. Not good. Let's see what we can do. A lot of that is because of the light, the sun. So I'm gonna come over here into my lights panel. Right, this one right here. So I'll click on it. And make sure that all of your lights are turned off. Right, you see how, you know, kind of like turns on the lights right there. Including the skylight, I think, and the sun. I think that's gonna do it, guys. Right, because now we see the glass in this glass right here, right? Let's take another look. Nope, I don't want that. That doesn't look bad. No, it does kind of look bad because we lose the glass over here and we get this kind of noise. Remember, we're not going to render it, so what we see right now, that's what we're going to get, and we get this kind of like shadows right here. So actually, no, take that back, turn off the skylight. I think this is the best, as good as it's going to get. Okay, so we go to View, Capture to File. That's the preview. Actually, something that I did change right here, what's the resolution? I think you're, as a default, what you guys should have is viewport, viewport as default. I'm actually gonna send it to the largest one that I have right here, which is the 1920 by 1080, since we're creating a, you know, relatively large sheet. So I'll do that. So I'll hit OK. Let's find a location. So find your project folder. All right. I think I put this under the renderings. Yeah, it's exploded. So, you know, I could call this exploded 2. So I think we have our components, guys. So we have are actually, let me take that back. We're missing, so we have the lines. They're right there. Hold on, this should be set view, top view. So we have our lines. Now we need to export them. So the last part, guys, from Rhino is to export this right here, right? This line work. So we select it, type export, enter. Three things: location, file name, and file type. So for the location, again, let's look for your project folder. We can call this exploded make 2D lines. We look for it. It's very important, guys, that you select the format, that it's AI. Right, so we're exporting an AI file out of Rhino, so we select that. Exploded make 2D lines, save it. In this box, you can leave this settings as they are right there, and click OK. So now we have gotten everything that we need from Rhino, right? So we got our image file, we have our lines. From here on, it's all Illustrator editing and formatting. Okay, so I think this is actually a good place to stop. Again, we can just make sure. So this is the file that we exported. So I'm gonna open it. This is a file that we exported with all of the lines from Rhino. We're gonna need this, and we're gonna need the images. The image of the exploded. Okay, except, guys, something that I just realized that I forgot to do is that for the image we need to turn off these lines, guys. So let me repeat that real quick. Okay, my bad. So minimize this, go back to Rhino, come over here, come to the so this is the top view. Let's go to the 3D view, clear my screen, go to my selected view, which was that one. That's what's important, that we're working with layers. Turn off projection, and turn off actually those lines right there. Right. Right. So we turn those off. We turn the project. You see, we want the lines to be we want the projecting lines to just be vector lines, which are the Illustrator lines, and not image lines. You can actually see that we can put the lines on top of it, but it's not going to be a clean drawing, right? This is a JPEG, and you start seeing it's kind of like the distorting right there of the line. So that's not going to give us a clean drawing, right? So I actually want to turn those off before making my make 2D. I'm sorry, before generating my render view. So there it is. Make sure that you do have a white background, and let's overwrite the image that I created. Let's make sure that it's not selected. So let's go to view, capture to file. Resolution is the highest one, maybe. I'm just gonna overwrite it. And there it is. So we have our two components. We have the image, and we have the make 2D lines from Rhino. The next thing will be to actually put it together in a board. Okay, so you've been doing great. Hopefully this is all good content. I love creating these graphics. I think that's where a little bit more of the magic of communication comes in. The art of architecture. how do we create, meaningful drawings, right? So I'm gonna stop this recording, and we'll check back for the last part, which is all of the Illustrator editing here. All right, guys. So you're doing great. Okay, almost done. We're almost there.